Welcome to Inside the Broncos, football in the West. This is our Colorado State edition. I'm Larry Pulowski, and joining me, as usual, Jeff Caves from Cumulus Radio, KTIK in specific.
Yes, I'm here. Oh, let's roll.
You are here. Let's roll. Well, let's go down memory lane for just a second.
Okay.
You went to Atlanta. You went through the whole experience. You watched the game. You sat in a half-empty stadium.
Yeah.
You went to the College Football Hall of Fame. Let's talk about that first. What was that experience like going into that brand new building that houses the College Football Hall of Fame?
Yeah, College Football Hall of Fame is all about interactivity. You walk in, you register, a light goes up on a helmet up on the wall for which team you're representing, and then this badge, as you go through the interactive displays, activates which team you prefer, and so the records for that team that are in the Hall of Fame come up. I saw Randy Troutman, I saw the Blue Turf, I saw tailgating at Boise State, all represented in the College Football Hall of Fame, and they can rotate pieces and parts out. Well worth your time, couple of hours max, and it's just adjacent to the Georgia Dome. It's awesome.
Well, that looked like a tremendous facility and something that everybody should see if they get down there. Now, the in-game experience to me looked a little weird. Now, when we go back to 2011, packed out stadium,
Right.
Georgia,
Right.
Boise State's kind of on a roll, coming off a Fiesta Bowl victory, 73,000 people in this place. This year, they close off the upper deck because nobody's there.
Right. Well, it was a different vibe. You had Boise State number 5 in 2011 playing Georgia, the home team. So BSU only had to fill in 10, 12, 15,000 seats. That's approximately what they accomplished. Different deal. This Ole Miss game was very complicated how it came about. It was a negotiation for the Chick-fil-A people to get this game done. They moved it. It was supposed to be at Ole Miss,
right,
on the Grove there.
At Oxford.
Yeah, so they moved it here, and everybody ended up winning other than them at the gate.
All right, very good. Well, if you would like to win tickets to the next Boise State home game, now we've already given away our Colorado State tickets. Congratulations to David Jacobson of Meridian. He wins 4 end zone seats to the Colorado State game. If you'd like to enter, go to ktrv.com and sign up to win. We'll be back with more on Inside the Broncos, Football in the West, brought to you by Even Green Technology.
Inside the Broncos, Football in the West is brought to you by Even Green Technology, the Treasure Valley Solar Authority, and Steve's Hometown Ford and Steve's Hometown Toyota, 100% committed to your satisfaction. Also by Western Heating and Cooling, turn to the experts, and Leisure Time Spas and Hearth Products. Come see us at Leisure Time. You'll be glad you did.
Welcome back to Inside the Broncos, Football in the West. Time now to review the Ole Miss game and talk a little bit with Jeff about your impressions. Now, we saw the new offense. We saw, motion, shifting. We actually saw tight ends catch the ball.
Yeah.
It was kind of a throwback to what we'd seen before, but kind of the same results we'd seen before.
Yeah, I think Boise State got into a situation where they held them close for 3 quarters defensively, and offensively they really couldn't run the ball when they needed to. They ran it occasionally. They could never throw the ball downfield, and ultimately Ole Miss would adjust to that and have more pressure on the quarterback. I thought there were times where Grant didn't have a lot of time. There were other times where he held the ball too long and made a poor decision and bad read. But you saw also, I think, the tempo of the game change. They use the quick tempo sort of interchanging and intermittently, and they'll go back to shifts and motions, which takes more time off the clock. So they're really mixing that up more, which I think is better for them, for this particular group. But they get another tight end back for the Colorado State game. We'll see how that affects them.
Well, let's not dissuade ourselves. The guys they were going up against, those were real men. That's an SEC football team that's picked to be in the top half of at least their division and maybe to play in the championship game. Okay, all that speculation. That offense didn't really thrill me that much with what I saw. But your thoughts on the defense for 3 quarters, Jeff? They were running around and they were hitting people and they were making tackles, and they played a stellar 3.5 quarters almost.
I think so, and that's what Marcel Yates said. He was happy with 3 quarters, not the fourth. Tyler Horn got injured and went out. I thought Dante Dion getting hurt him as well.
Sure.
Ole Miss started picking on Moxie at that time, and he made a mistake. Cleishon Page ultimately made a couple of mistakes when he didn't have many the first 3 quarters. They had some tackling breakdowns with Ioane and Page and even Corey Bell on that last score. So some of the old problems seeped in the fourth quarter. I don't know if they were tired. I don't know if that's what it was. But I just think the law of averages catches up with you, and you need your offense to keep pace and give you that break and that lift, and that didn't happen.
Well, one thing that I noticed when I went through the stat page, you know, a few years ago, you'd go through that stat page and you'd see a list of 8, 9, 10 receivers that had caught the ball. 4 against Ole Miss. And one of them was a tight end. Ajayi, 12 receptions. And then the same cast of characters. It's Miller and it's Shane Williams-Rhodes.
Right.
And that is it. What can they do to get other people involved? It's so easy to key on 2 receivers.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you can design plays that go to them early, and that's your primary read, and come hell or high water, we got to break some tendencies, so we're going to get Spurbick the ball. We're going to bring him in and throw him the ball. We're going to get Chaz Anderson a bubble screen. You know, we're going to do that as a designed play. That is your read. That is your option. But when you see guys hitting limited amounts of people touching the ball, it's because the quarterback does not necessarily have the greatest ability to distribute it, and that's really on Grant and that game plan, and that's going to be a test of time. We'll see as the game slows down for him with Colorado State if he makes better reads he did last year.
All right, very good. Well, we're going to get into the Mountain West Conference and a couple of games of interest there. Right now, though, we'd like to give a big shout out to our friends at the Blue and Orange store in Boise Town Square. Travis Hawks, get a little addition to our set here.
Yes.
A beautiful new Bronco.
Yeah, just the Bronco head. So get your game day T-shirts out there at the Boise Town Square Mall at the Blue and Orange store for only $12.50. You know, they change them blue, orange, whatever you need.
I know. They got a
them.
color scheme every day.
Yeah,
you
check
got
it
to keep up with it, boys and girls. Got to keep up with it. All right. When we come back, time for the Mountain West right here on Inside the Broncos, Football in the West. Welcome back to Inside the Broncos, Football in the West, brought to you by Even Green Technologies, your solar authority in the Treasure Valley. All right, Fresno State last week got just slapped around by your Trojans. They were kind of having some turmoil, but it didn't seem to affect them too much. This week, the Bulldogs get to take on another Pac-12 team in Utah. Your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think it's a little different. I mean, looking at Utah, Poe, they gave up some yards on the ground that they were not happy about to Idaho State.
Right.
But it really was only about 100 yards at the half. It wasn't a lot. They had about 180 yards at the end of the game. So I think he was making something out of nothing there. And then Idaho State gave them some special teams mistakes, and that was difficult. So I don't know as much about Utah. And Fresno State's still rotating quarterbacks. That's not a comfortable feeling. That's difficult.
I saw that. A 2-quarterback deal just to me means you have no decision. You just can't make a
Well, you
decision.
don't, yeah, because you're still trying to figure it out. But I think one of the killer problems in this game maybe is they're really struggling with pass rush. And they're moving guys around, trying to get somebody off the edge. So I think Fresno's really struggling right now. I don't know if this is the time for them to upset Utah.
What do you think about Martez Waller, running back? Didn't see a lot of him last year, if he was even on the team last year. Comes out, rolls up 97 yards against USC, but you know, you just, unless you watch the game, you really don't know if those yards were valuable yards or just, you know, late game pickup yards. But at least they have a running back that they can go to.
No, and they're going to have to, you know, because Carr is now starting for the Raiders. There's finally not a Carr starting for the Bulldogs. They need play action pass. They need to be able to run the football. They cannot just launch it 60 times a game. This is not the Fresno State we all remember. They have got to be able to run the football, and this kid could be their answer.
All right, but we'll see how they do against the Utes of Utah. Washington State had a dismal effort last week against Rutgers. Cougar fans have got to be really concerned. They gave up 500 yards to Rutgers at home in Pullman. That was not a good deal. This week, the Wolfpack comes in with a Cody Fajardo that had a pretty decent game, but against a team from Southern Utah that they really should have smoked, but yet barely got out of the game with a win.
Yeah, he had a pick six at the end for 85 yards going the other way. This game is in Reno, so that's good, but Washington State's still a 4-point pick. I look in Nevada, I think they're better off than 2013. I think they're a better football team. They've had to move some pieces and parts. They took an extra running back, threw him at wide receiver, brought in a new receiver. I think Richardson was his name, had 13 catches in his first outing. So they've got some more pieces and parts. I just don't know if Nevada and their defense can be timely to stop Washington State. Can they be timely? They don't have to shut them down, Poe. I don't know if you can shut down Mike Leach's offense.
Probably not.
But can they be timely enough and score enough points to beat Washington State at home? I'm iffy on it until their defense proves it to me.
Well, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I'm not sure they've got the manpower to stack up with any Pac-12 team. Well, maybe the exception would be Colorado, because I saw a little bit of that, and they didn't look too good. So we'll see how that all works out. But I'm not sold on Fajardo. I never have been sold on this kid. I know Chris Ault wasn't sold on him. And what about Coach Polian? Any good sound bites from him lately?
No, I didn't hear anything from him on that guy. I think he took the win and ran. He's like, hey, we got other things to do here.
All right, very good. Well, when we come back, it's time to make some picks, and you're going to love the results from last week. Right here on Inside the Broncos, Football in the West, brought to you by Even Green Technology. Welcome back to Inside the Broncos, Football in the West. Time now for the two best procrastinators. Or is it procrastinators?
It should have been.
Prognosticators.
I should have put it off as long as possible.
We're two of the best procrastinators, two of the worst prognosticators on the West Coast. So stay with us on this. Tail of the tape from last week. Thank God the Idaho Vandal game got canceled, or we would have been probably 0-6. We were horrible. Jeff got beat on a field goal. We both picked stupid games with South Carolina and Miami and Louisville, and then we both blew the Bronco game. So let's get into something new. Let's get to new picks for the week.
All right, well, I think I can handle this. And Hawaii is notorious for not bouncing back and playing tough the second time. They had a great contest with Washington. I don't think they have it up again, and the Beavers hammered them at home last year. So I'm going to take the Beavers.
Yeah, I think that's a great pick. Beavers should roll over the Warriors. All right. Oh, the Trojans are up on the board for you. No way.
Well, I told you I like the points.
Yeah.
I like the logo too, but I like the points here. This game has been a single-digit game the last 4 years. It's tied going into the fourth quarter. Give me the points, and there's a good chance USC will win.
Well, 4 points is an interesting spread. Bookies go there for a reason, so we'll see how that works out. All right, let's go to my picks. Right now, I'm going to take, the Spartans with 12 points on the road at Oregon. I just can't pass that up. But then again, I am from Michigan, so I was a Michigan fan, not a Michigan State fan. But I'm going to go with the Spartans. Take the points and move on. And Ohio State, 11 points. Va-Tech on the road, usually kind of sketchy. Ohio State's got a lot of things to prove without Braxton Miller, that quarterback that everybody was talking about. They've got points to prove, so I'm going to go with them and give up the points.
Okay, all right. And with Boise State, hey, I'm saying let's see them score a lot of points before I start saying, oh, yeah, I'll give you 11 points, no problem. Until then, you're going to give me 11 points, I'll take it. Let's see them throw the football down the field. Let's see them explode, and then I'll change my mind.
All right, well, that's what I'm looking for in this game, for them to go down the field, for them to explode, get by the line of scrimmage and score some long touchdowns. I'm going to give up the points and go. All right, there are our picks of the week. Please be responsible with what you do with this information. We'll be back with more of Inside the Broncos Football in the West, brought to you by Even Green Technology. Let's turn our attention now to the Pac-12 Conference. Before we get into that, don't forget, if you'd like to go to the next Boise State home game, go to our website, 12ktrv.com, and sign up to win 4 end zone tickets to the next home game against Louisiana on September 20th. All right, Jeff, big game.
Yeah.
But
two
a
of them.
big point spread, too.
Right.
Michigan State goes to Autzen Stadium and takes on Eugene. Mm-hmm. They are a 11 to 12-point dog, depending on who you talk to.
Yeah.
How can that be?
Well, there's a lot of reasons. Michigan State doesn't travel well when they place top 3 and 4 teams. If you go back and do the history, they haven't beaten one of them in like 20 years almost.
And the bookies know that.
Yeah, they've got an idea what it takes to go from Michigan to Oregon. And then I think additionally, if you look at Oregon's explosiveness and the type of offense that they run a zone read scheme, and that's not something Michigan State sees a lot of.
Right.
And they know that too. You break it down, they'll see about 4 times the amount of it that they normally do. So they've got to prepare for that, and we know Oregon has that down as well. So I think it's difficult.
Well, Oregon's offense, it's one of those things where if Oregon gets out early, they get ahead, Michigan State will never catch up. They just don't have the ability to do that. And then the boat race is on. But if Michigan State can stay in that game early,
sure,
then it gives them some momentum going into a second half. And then the coaching staff for Oregon starts thinking. And, you know, coaches that think are okay, but usually it's kind of like players. Just react to what the situation is.
Yeah, there is a template out there that Michigan State fits, and that's the Stanford template and how to beat Oregon.
Great example.
Punch them in the face, slow the game down on offense, run the football, and be very physical up front. And they have all that. Now, there's 6 new defensive starters for Michigan State.
Ow.
And we know how good they were last year. This is a little different mix this year. So I have to factor that in. Whatever happens, Oppo, both teams will bring back an impressive non-conference win, one of them to their conference, so that they can play on that strength of schedule. So it's big for that reason.
Yeah, and last week they played Jacksonville State and South Dakota. So we have no idea what either of these teams look
Right.
like. It'll be interesting. All right, last week we talked about Southern Cal and all the things that were going on behind the scenes down there, and you know, Steve Sarkisian's first game and what was going to happen. Well, what happened is they blew out Fresno.
Sure.
This week, though, they take on Stanford up in Palo Alto.
Yeah, and use the Oregon template again. SC went for over, I think, 105 plays against Fresno State. Well, that's an Oregon tempo. And Stanford has shut that down before.
Sure,
and these two guys, the last 4 times they've played, the game's been tied going into the fourth quarter. This is usually a field goal game. Now, Sarkisian won, has beat them at Seattle. USC's beat Stanford, but typically in the last 5-6 years, Stanford's had Southern Cal's number. Now, this is a whole different Southern Cal scheme, so I think it's a real toss-up. I mean, if you can get the points, I like them for that reason.
All right, very good. Well, I look at Stanford, and you know, they just continue to seem to be reloading. They change coaching staffs, they reload. They change players, they get #1 draft picks in the NFL, they reload. This Hogan kid at quarterback, I really like him. I think he's solid. I don't know if he's an NFL prospect. I mean, he's a prospect, but is he a suspect?
Yeah.
I don't know that.
Well, he's got a great O-line, Poe, and he's imploded against SC before, so it's not like
so
he's
got a
perfect.
track record.
Yeah, but they have a tremendous offensive line. They're just younger. You know, they have a lot of sophomores. They got some redshirt freshmen and some guys that they're mixing in, but they're tremendously talented. We'll see if they're talented early, because USC's got maybe one of the top 3 D-lines in the country.
All right, when we come back, it's time to get into Colorado State. We'll see what the Rams have on board for the Broncos right here on Inside the Broncos, Football in the West. Welcome back to Inside the Broncos, Football in the West. We turn our attention now to Boise State and the Colorado State Rams. Well, all we've heard all week, Jeff, is how great this running game is for the Rams of Colorado State. They've got a 2-headed monster to bring into town. A couple of guys that I believe are JC transfers, if I'm not correct.
One's transfer from
One's
Alabama.
a transfer, and one from Alabama. So, you know, there's some credentials right there. Let's talk a little bit about BSU and Colorado State and what your thoughts are on Boise State's defense against that offense.
Well, you can start right there, Poe, and if we look at what happened at Ole Miss, I thought Boise State's run defense held up really well. Again, though, we'll bring up Tyler Horn's not going to be in that rotation, I don't think, unless there's some medical miracle, but you know, things are possible. So without him, how will that rotation hold up interior-wise? The linebackers were really active. I thought they played the run very well. Can Grayson get that magic back and throw the ball effectively? He hit a couple of passes last year against Boise State, but he really wasn't as effective as he was against others. Is Dante Dion going to be back in the field? Yeah. If he's not, will they pick on whoever is? Because they saw that's what Ole Miss did. Well, do they have receivers like Ole Miss? Well, the 2 leading receivers that were in the game last year for Colorado State are back on the field potentially against Boise State Saturday night. So that is some of the matchup intrigue. And it's time to find out what Boise State is really like. And I think against Colorado State, we're going to have a great feel for that.
All right, very good. You know, when you look at Grayson, he didn't have to throw the ball last week. Buffaloes couldn't stop that running game. They racked up a lot of yards there, ran a lot of time off the clock. So, you know, very indicative of not being able to know what this quarterback could do. All right, the receiving core last week, Hart, the running back, Hart, the receiver, it was Hart all over the field, and that's the transfer you were talking about.
Yeah.
How about this kid's skills individually?
Well, I think he's not as big as Jay Ajayi, for example, but I think he has a little bit more elusiveness, if you will. And what kind of space is he going to get to work with? You know, how much will Boise State load up and challenge Grayson to beat him on the outside? Again, do they have Dion back? Is he healthy? Is he there? Will Page play as aggressively? Will they be energized by this home opening crowd that they'd like to get as close to 36,000 as possible, but more than likely won't be? All of those to me are factors in how Colorado State chooses to go after Boise State. And McElvain's a smart guy. I mean, he ran Nick Saban's offense at Alabama. He knows the weaknesses of Boise State. It's can they exploit them? They're without a tight end. They lost a tight end for this game, so that won't help their chances. I don't know that they're ready to get it done personally.
All right, well, let's flip the side of the ball and talk a little bit about offense for Boise State, what they have to do. Now, we talked in our earlier segment about 4 receivers touching the ball for Boise State last week. How do the Broncos get other people involved in this passing game? What is it going to take to get 7, 8 receivers with their hands on the ball and create the chaos for that defense?
Well, I think you got to have time. You know, when you get in long situations, 2nd and long, 3rd and long, or 1st and long, if you've had penalties, you need time for the quarterback to operate. If they want to design plays and get other guys involved right off the bat with your first read, you can do it that way as well. And early enough in the season, you may want to do that to break some tendencies on paper. Because if it is just the Ajayi, Miller, SWR show, which we thought it was coming in, it will be more difficult marching forward for Boise State to really have anybody that honors anything else on the field.
Well, the thing that worries me, too, about this offense is just it's so Ajayi heavy right now. There's a lot of games left on this schedule. They're going to run this kid into the ground. If he's got 30, 35 touches every game, he's never going to make it through a 12-game schedule, in my opinion. Now, I mean, obviously he could, but the odds are it's going to be difficult. So I think they've got to spread that thing around. They've got to figure this out. Devin Demas, 1 carry last week. Wow, that was surprising to me. Is he for real?
To me, playing time tells me everything. That is if you look for comments from coaches, who did they play and did they get them the ball? That tells you what they think about guys to me.
All right, very good. Well, Jeff, pregame show this week starts probably about 3 o'clock on KBOI?
3 o'clock, we'll be there on 670 KBOI with Bronco Game Day and lead you all the way up to kickoff.
All right, very good. Well, thanks to our major sponsors, Steve's Hometown Toyota and Steve's Hometown Ford, and our title sponsor, Even Green Technology, your solar expert in the Treasure Valley. We'll be back next week, 6 o'clock, right here on Inside the Broncos, Football in the West.
Inside the Broncos, Football in the West is brought to you by Even Green Technology, the Treasure Valley Solar Authority, and Steve's Hometown Ford and Steve's Hometown Toyota, 100% committed to your satisfaction. Also by Western Heating and Cooling, turn to the experts, and Leisure Time Spas and Hearth Products. Come see us at Leisure Time. You'll be glad you did.